young boy would spend hours on the beach looking for whatever the tide left on the shore: driftwood, a miniature Quran, a single shoe, or seashells. Now grown up, these fragments are resurfacing in his paintings. Sicilian architect turned artist Alessandro Giorgi grew up in a town of just 130 people on the southwest coast of Sicily. The isolation ideal for migrant boats from North Africa quietly slinking to shore at night, and the Mafia working in silence. Now Alessandro is drawing inspiration from his childhood memories as they slowly surface in fluid, dreamlike imagery. He blurs the human form, challenging where one person ends and another begins, inviting us to see identity as something shaped in relation to others. I'm your host, Sarah Rhodes, speaking with Alessandro Giorgi from his studio in Munich in this episode of Art Destinations Sicily. Welcome to Art Destinations, Alessandro. It's really lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
You grew up in a little village on the southwest coast of Sicily. Could you describe that? Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up there.
Yes, I grew up in Torretta Granitola. It's a small fishing village on the southwest coast of Sicily. And as you say, it's a really small village, and it's like an island in an island because it's completely isolated. There are no groceries, no public transportation, no shops. And be there as a child, but also now it feels like really be on another island. And used to spend most of the time also without shoes, no cars at all. And you can just wake up in the morning and directly jump in the sea. It's just from my parents' house, just maybe 100 meters far away. And you feel is isolated in such a place. But it's amazing because everybody knows each other. During the night, when the night is really dark, you can see the coast of Tunisia. It's like 150 kilometers far away, but sometimes you can see it. And also it's happened when I was a child that the migrants arrived to our coast during the night. And everybody was, of course, the children more. Everybody was screaming like, yeah, they arrived. And we were running to the beach. And the only thing we could find were clothes and also small Korans, I remember, on the beach. And also this scary people running in order to hide themselves in the vegetation. So I think I was conscious that we're not alone there, but of course it was still feel in some way isolated.
But also in the neighbouring towns, you had the Mafia presence. I'm just wondering if growing up you were aware of that, and did that have a feeling or an atmosphere?
You're talking about probably Castelvetrano. Castelvetrano is about 10 kilometers far away in the north. And that's the place where I went to school, and where also my parents used to live during the winter time. And there is about Mafia. I think the Mafia is a kind of normalized way of thinking. I never seen shooting on the street or something like that. And even if I grow up in Castelvetrano in the 90s, I will probably tell you a little joke about it. So there are two fishes met in the sea, and the one asks the other, "How is the water today?" And the other answers, "What is water?" So what I mean is this is about this normalized way of thinking, and this build a good terrain where Mafia can grow, probably. And when as a child I grow up with sentences like trust nobody, or the best word is the one you don't say, and that's for me a kind of code of silence, probably. Even if the people have a really good health, if you grow up with these sentences, this have a meaning, I think.
Would that influence how people's relationships in the town? And also I live in not a smaller town as that. I live in a town of 80,000 people, but everybody knows what everyone's doing, it does sort of censor you in terms of how much you might say.
Of course, you trust your family and trust your friends. If you start to talk about bigger system like politics and something like that, the people don't trust them. The people don't trust politics, even local politics. A lot of people prefer to gain advantages for themselves at the expense of the common good. Probably a good example is the rubbish on the beach and on the street, because this place don't belong to me. I have to take care of my own stuff, and so that's a bit about the small circle around me, like my families and friends. I trust them, but if you leave the circle, then the relationship change a lot.
That's quite interesting. And do you think that's because of the mafia?
I think it's the other way around. So it's not because of the mafia, but that's how the mafia is growing up. So this where this mindset is coming from.
The mindset's coming from living on the island, living in this small place.
I think it's more just because of this mindset, because of the people think like this. That's the terrain where mafia mentality can grow. And yeah.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
I think that's another sentences that I used to hear when I grew up was, so those who mind their own businesses live to be 100.
Well, actually, that points to that Rita Atria story, actually, when her father and her brother were mafioso and they were murdered, and she started to work with the anti-mafia organization, and her mother was really angry, wanting her to keep quiet. And she was a real campaigner for the anti-mafia. And then when the prosecutor who was looking after her was murdered, then she jumped out of her apartment building in Rome, because she would rather commit suicide than be killed by the mafia.
Yeah, she broke the code of silence.
Yes. I think that's maybe what you're saying.
Yeah, that's she wanted to make visible what is invisible, or what to want to remain invisible. And if you broke this kind of silence, and if you start working with the police to bring other criminals to the police, then that's of course you're making big problems, and you could have big troubles. And what is insane is that even your family don't trust you anymore. Even your family start to work against you. And I think it's really insane, because that's mean that's what is important than family, and this kind of dynamics are really insane. I cannot understand them.
People say that the mafia have left Sicily now, but is that possible?
It's like on holidays. Mafia is living here in Sicily on holiday. I don't know. I think that's I don't think it's like this, because I don't know what the people think mafia. What is mafia? For me, how I say, it's a normalized way of thinking. And as long as corruption and favoritism are there, then for me, mafia is still there as well, because that's the way mafia goes into politics. That's why the system is unhealthy. That's why probably a lot of people are also leaving Sicily. In my generation, but also before me. And this island is rich. There are amazing resources and landscape. A lot of tourists are coming, and I'm still asking myself, for God of love, why the stuff is still not working. And my answer is probably because of corruption, because of this mafia mentalities and mafia system. Yeah, and criminality, yeah.
France and Italy would have the biggest tourism of any country in the world. And Sicily is part of that. And you would think that the economy would be thriving, but when you visit there, you see that it's not really.
Yeah, I can also see probably a bit as a small difference, because where I come from, the west side of Sicily, that's where the Mafia was born in some way. And this is where Mafia is still quite strong, I think. And if you have a look on the other side of Sicily, like Catania and Taormina and Siracusa, on the other side, the industries are working quite good. So the system looks to be more healthy. And I think that's also why probably on my side, on Sicily, also where I come from, this criminal organization is still working, or at least as I say, the mentality of the people is still attached to this kind of thoughts.
So how long were you living there for?
So I used to spend my summertime every year, so my childhood, and I officially left Sicily when I was 26. So it's almost 10 years ago, but still now I used to spend my summertime there. So I never really left this place.
No, your heart's always there.
Yeah.
So what you went and studied architecture as your first degree?
Also at that time I was drawing a lot, and I thought, okay, probably if I study architecture, I can draw even more. And this was actually a good idea, because at that time, probably still now, architecture in Palermo, also at the University of Palermo, is really classical. So we draw tons of paper and sketches and concept, and without laptop, without computer. And so it was really classical. And even after the study, if you want to become an architect in Italy, so after the study, you have to do a couple of exams. And one of these exams is to make a project completely on paper without a computer. And at the end, you have a couple of these big blueprints and made with hand drawing, and it's really cool. Yeah, I think it probably is still like that. I don't know.
That's so special. That's the wonderful thing about being educated in Italy, that you're learning all the foundational classical ways of thinking.
Yeah, and also I think I think the people at the university in Palermo know that after the study there was really no job as architect, and that's why it was really. So the study there was really theoretical. So we had a lot of art history, a lot of composition, but really few details. That's why when I started to work in Germany, everybody know how to draw details of the building and stuff. I had no idea how this stuff was working. But at that time, I was in a really big architecture office in Bremen, something about 70, 80 people. And at the beginning, I was looking for a sharpener for a pencil, and nobody had one. So everybody was only drawing on computer. And it was like, oh my God, this is insane. But that's opened me a lot of possibilities, because the owner of the studios loved the way I could draw, just making really fast sketches. So you can communicate it quickly, and also a drawing it's not this amount of details where the client could probably focus and find some problem. I think the people at the time really loved this architecture sketches.
What made you to take the step from architecture to art?
I mean, as architect in Germany, the people, so you get good money for the job, but a lot of people are also getting burned out, and it's a really stressful job. so full with responsibilities. And I was not really happy. Yeah. The drawing really calmed me down. It's really meditative. And I used to draw a lot also when I was in architecture office, of course, because of clients, but also because you could find every time, everywhere, just a piece of paper and a pen. And so this is a practice I could do every time, everywhere. And so it's feel also really intimate, so like a diary. And I also like the definition of Rinus van der Velde. Rinus van der Velde is a Belgian artist, contemporary artist. He also made a lot of drawings, even as a really big. And he said that drawing is democratic because everybody can draw. I mean, if I ask you to describe me the way to the next grocery, I will not ask you to paint it. I will ask you to draw it on this piece of paper. And I really like this definition. And this is also really direct. So you can draw direct. And it's not about doing the right or the wrong things. It's just, and I think I like it because it's like you can give your thought and your feeling a form, like a seismograph on your feelings. Yeah. So in Germany, of course, you can also find a lot of drawings in galleries and museums. But I had this feeling here, the drawing culture is less present than in, let's say, in French or in Italy, for example. I also connected with the comics scenes. So the people are more interested in drawing. For example, in French, you have a huge culture about comics, and here in Germany, the people. I had a really insane conversation with a gallerist here in Munich, and they wanted to explain me that comics are not art. They said, "What do they have? It's not art." And I had with me. It was a perfect moment. I had with me a big catalog of a exhibition that was running at the time in Saint Pompidou in Paris. The name of the exhibition was Comics 1964-2024. And I showed to him this catalog and he said, yeah, but they are doing it because they try to push the comics art culture. Okay, yeah, I don't know. You had no idea what are you talking about, probably.
Okay. So how does your work cross over with comics? I mean, your work is very lucid and I'm not sure how grounded it is. There's a real floating feeling about it. Do you draw inspiration from comics?
Yeah, I think I get a lot of inspiration from comics, probably more than for other artists. I think I really like the storytelling through drawing. And you are really amazing comics artist that had this power to tell stories through drawing. I mean, of course, in comics we also have the text, but also without text, the compositions are insane. And I really like the power of storytelling through drawings. And you can also apply it to artworks, to singular artworks and composition. That's probably also why most of my work are figurative. This is another way to tell stories if you use characters, composition with figures that don't have to be so, how can I say, hybrid figure. That's why probably you say this word, they're floating. So it's like the figures are connected with each other and probably in a fluid way, probably. And I like to think this is also the way I used to swim and dive in the water. So everything is connected. And the feeling I had when I swim in the water with fishes and algae is the same feeling I try to give the figures in my composition. So everything is connected.
I like that. Bringing the childhood or the place, your home, into your work. Bringing the Sicily into your work.
A lot of friends or lots of clients that looked my work before and after they visited Sicily. They say that you can, after they visited Sicily, they can understand more about my work, probably, because of the high contrasts of the figures, like in Sicily you have this really strong light when the sun is on the zenith, like in midday, and the shadows are really dark. And also the fruits and the food is so colorful. And I also think that's something to do probably with Sicilian Baroque. I don't know if you know it. The Sicilian Baroque was a style also in the architecture. And there are a lot of churches and buildings from that time, and they are completely covered with details and with ornaments. All these elements also produce a lot of shadows, and the buildings look like they are breathing and look like they are alive, and I really like it. So I'm definitely not a minimalist. I'm probably more a maximalist. More is more, not less is more. So give me more.
I like that. What ideas are you exploring in your work?
So there are different themes that I'm trying to elaborate through my work. I think probably the most important is that's about trying to connect element. I mean, because of my background, I try to see connection where the other people probably want to set or see borders or margins. And I mean, you can apply this also to an island, because, for example, Sicily is divided to the rest of the world through the sea, but it's also connected through the sea to other countries. And I think you can apply it to everything because, for example, climate change and stuff, even if I'm living here and the politics here are taking decision in Germany, this also influence what is happening on the other side of the world. And this also influence the climate migration that are coming, the climate migrations that are coming to Sicily. I tried to give this feeling that a lot of things are connected, and I try to elaborate this in my work.
Now, another thing I really enjoyed, I actually show your work to my students at university in different classes. I teach different classes, and I always have a reason to show them. One of the things I really like is the stop motion, and I just loved how you have such a broad application for your work. You've painted the murals in the building, and you do the stop motion, and you've got the paintings, and you seem to, while the subject matter itself is quite fluid within the boundary of the canvas or the page, you're also slipping between mediums quite easily.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I think I like to try stuff. I think that's probably the mindset. So it's not about be good or be the best in something. I really like just to try different mediums. And so as I said before, as long as I had this feeling to draw a line on everything, I like it. For example, last week I was in Slovenia for a project, and it was my first street art project. So they let me paint on a bike lane on a border region between Slovenia and Italy. And it was my first time. I already said to the clients, I've never done this before. But they took a look at my different works. They say, okay, you can trust you can do it in some way, in your way. Of course, we are not a street artist, but you can try it. And I tried, and it was good. It was good. I had a lot of fun.
So how long was the bike lane?
So the bike lane was really long. I think I paint I painted in a couple of days, probably around 15 meters.
Beautiful. What a fantastic... I'd love to see a photo of that. We could put that on Instagram, actually. Just to my last question for you, how would you describe the atmosphere of your work, your paintings and drawings and murals?
The atmosphere? It's complicated. I don't know. Probably I would like the word like dreamy or fluid. I think fluid is a good word. Yeah, I like this word, fluid.
Are you inviting people to be in a lucid state and to sort of drift and imagine? Or are you sort of unsettling people? Or
probably it's about thinking about their own outlines. So how would you define your own identities? How you will define your own outlines? In order to define something, you used to draw outlines. You used to draw or to define outline, to define margins, to define categories. Even if a line on paper or words coming out of your mouth, you had to describe stuff. And a lot of this describing process is a kind of like isolating the stuff in order to define it. And probably what I try to do with my works is the connecting again this separates element. And that's why I like this word fluids, because before I was talking about this feeling to swimming and diving with fish and jellyfish. We are like sharing the same water, and the same happen on Earth. I mean, we are sharing the same air, even if is less dense. But we are all swimming in this air fluids, and that's why a lot of stuff it's happening, and the other side of the world are influencing the way the thinking are going on this side of the world.
I'm just thinking, living in that village as a child, where you're hyper aware of, different communities being in different places, whether it's the activities of, I don't know if you knew about the activities of the Mafia when you were little, but there was that happening, and then the fishing boats going out into the water because that was the fishing port, and then the migrants coming in their boats illegally and landing on the beach at night. All of these things, maybe, would you say these fed into this idea of these sort of lucid images that you're making, where you're kind of a child living in this town where all these things are kind of circling around, but they're not concrete ideas, any of those. They're kind of floating ideas, really, aren't they? Because you're really, as a child, you'd be really grounded in nature play, living on the beach and playing with the shells and the vegetation, and you'd be playing with your friends, and it would all be very innocent. But then there's all these kind of other abstract ideas circling around, whether in conversation or, seeing boats carrying fish or people.
For example, I remember we were playing on the beach, and we found a lot of stuff just carrying to the beach from the sea, and like shoes, or probably like the destroyed boat. And I think there was a lot that this gave you this feeling that something is happening in the sea, something is happening outside of the village, and you only get like small pieces, one after the other. And based on these small pieces, you start to imagine stories in your mind. Like, where is this shoes coming from? Why is this book here on the beach? And probably this makes a lot with your imagination as a child. So your consciousness, you're not alone because of all these small inputs.
But I like the idea that these fragments of life are floating in the water and getting washed up on the shore. And now you're painting these fragments of life in these paintings in a fluid way.
Yes, they are fragments of life. Oh, that's good. I like it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Alessandro, for coming along to Art Destinations. That was a really great conversation, and I feel like you gave me a new way of thinking.
Thank you. I'm glad about it.
You've been listening to Art Destinations, a podcast of fortnightly conversations with artists and thinkers living and or working on islands to see how these unique places shape imaginations. This season takes us to Sicily, following on from our journeys through Lutruwita, Tasmania and Venice. Art Destinations is co-produced with SARP Gallery Director Alfio Puglisi. To be reminded about the next episode in the Sicily series, subscribe to our newsletter at artdestinations.org. I'm your host, Sarah Rhodes. Ciao for now.